Okay, so all of you online can hear me nice and fine, right? Yes. Okay, so this class is for the purpose of starting with your test series, right? Now, with regard to test series, I'm assuming that most of you would be writing this year test series, right? That is the assumption. But yes, there might be candidate who wanted to do practice, right, and write the test next year. So that is also the case. But anyhow, we will try to deal with both of them. The candidate who are writing this year mains, or probability है कि ये mains लिखने को मिलेगा, right? Or the candidate who are not writing. Okay. Now there is a third type of candidate also, which is often I generally don't talk much about it, but last 2-3 years I have seen that almost 20 candidates are there who are writing to improve their ranks also. Okay, right? So there will be sort of a three type of candidate, right? The first is that who is not qualifying but writing for the sake of preparation, that next year they will be able to write, and second is who is writing is for the first time, and the third is who is trying to improve their rank. Okay, so the three type of candidate. Now first let me very briefly explain you the structure of the this course. Now the structure of this course, remember that we have altogether 12 tests. 12 tests meaning it will be a full length test. We will have that 8 questions, out of that you have to do any 5, and that too each question have been subdivided according to the topics. Now if you look at the exam structure or the test structure, so you have question number 1, 2, 3, 4, that will be part A of the any test. Then we have question number 5, 6, 7 and 8. Question number 1 and 5 are compulsory, and these all have 10 question of 5 marks, right? So they are mandatory in nature. Now for the 10 number question, you have to basically write 150 words. So keep in your mind that it will be around 2 pages, right? 1.5 and 2 pages depending upon your handwriting of you, obviously. Then you will have to write at least 3 questions by choosing at least one from them. So either you can choose from part A 3 questions 1 to 3, or you can choose from part B 2 questions 1 and 2, right? So question number 1 and 5 is compulsory. Now these all options that you have, in that we have always 3 subdivision of the question, meaning you have a 15 marker question, again a 15 marker question, again a 20 marker question. Sometime in 20 marker they ask you 2 also, right? Question number 2A1, 2A2, right? So sometimes they ask you 10 marker question also, but mostly the structure is that we have a 2 15 marker and 1 20 marker. Now in the case of 15 marker, remember UPSC has not given any guideline, but we have to understand that there we have to write around 300 words. Okay, 250 to 300 words, not exactly 300 words, 250 to 300 words, and for the purpose of 20 marker we will go to 350 to 400 words. Okay, 350 to 400 words, that is the general obviously framing that you must know. Now no need to actually count the words, okay, these are the marks that you are going to give, obviously that is a futile exercise. So what you will do, you will make a very general assumption that see in one line we are able to write 5 to 6 words, so accordingly how much line is needed. Okay, so that is the general structure that you must remember, that while giving examination keep that in mind, because what happens sometimes, that understand it very nicely, that an examiner obviously is going to judge you on the basis of the thing that you are writing here, right? And there is a psychological benefit with regard to that if you are writing till the end of the page. Now I am not saying that that is something which always gains you marks, obviously that is a futile thing, but still some sort of psychological advantage कि भाई बंदे ने last तक लिखा है, ठीक है, पेज खत्म हो गया, otherwise he could have written more, right? So that sort of, in some of the questions that psychological advantage do get, ठीक है, तो कभी कभी पेज पूरा भरना भी जरूरी है, that is something one must keep into mind. You cannot have a situation whereby you are writing 100 words but very nice 100 words. Those where we required to write 150 words, that is a 10 marker question, you have written 100 words and you are thinking we have written perfect 100 words, doesn't matter, you will not get good marks. So it means that adhering to the word limit is very important. ठीक है, तो ये बात थोड़ी सी some psychological advantage you do get with regard to adhering of word limit, right? So you cannot skip the word limit. I have seen people this year also who have gotten less mark because they have not adhered to the word limit, right? Like this year, I'm not going to name the candidate, but still, he said, "Kya re, पिछले बार और इस बार में कोई difference तो मुझे नहीं दिखाया." I mean, the answer is same. This year you got in why? So he, you know, laughingly said कि सर इस बार मैंने पेज पूरे भरे, आपकी बात मैंने मानी, मैंने पेज पूरे के पूरे पे पेज भर के आया, right? So there is a psychological benefit. तो word limit को थोड़ा adhere करना जरूरी है. Keep that in mind, okay? You cannot have a situation where you are writing less, even though the quality is very good. But even if you are writing less, you are not going to fetch good marks. Okay, so थोड़ी सी, you know, the word limit has to be taken into account. That is something, you know, keep that in mind. Yes, online people, you can simply type Y. I will understand that you are getting my point. Yes, Maitri, Divya, Maitri, I think. Aditya, Priyanka, everyone getting my point, right? हाँ, तो ध्यान रखेंगे कि थोड़ा सा, you know, word limit पे focus करना है. That is something very important. Okay, तो ये structure हो गया. Now, with regard to the number of tests, let us, you know, again go one by one. If you look at our syllabus, we have paper 1, paper A, 1 ही कहते हैं इसको, and then we have paper 2. Now in paper A, we have both 2 parts, as you all know. In part A, we have Consti and Admin Law, and in part B, we have International Law. Similarly, in paper 2, part A, we have Crime and Tort, and in part B, we have Contract and CLD. Right, so that is the structure of our paper, entire paper. Now, how the test has been planned, let me brief you. Now, in the Consti Law, we have 2 tests, test number 1 and test number 2. So, first 7 to 8 topics of the Consti Law till Supreme Court we have in test number 1, and after Supreme Court along with Admin Law we have in test number 2. So, the ideal structure is that I have planned the test for each 1 week. So, it means in 1 week you go through the entirety of that test syllabus, 7 to 8 topics, study it, revise it, go through the topper's copy, right, and then you write test. Okay, that is the aim. However, there might be a situation whereby you want to start with, suppose, you know, some other test, test number 5 or test number 4, whatever. That is also allowed, but that will take a week because I am still in the process of preparing questions. I prepare question late because I want to, you know, add as new things as it can be, right. So I have already prepared 4 tests, rest 7 tests, rest 5 tests I am in the verge of preparing. Obviously that I will prepare in this weekend itself, I will prepare it. Similarly, in test number 3 and test number 4, that consists of international law. So first 7 topics till state recognition I think we have in test number 3, and from state recognition to the international economic law we have in test number 4, right. So total 4 tests in 2 tests in part A and 2 tests in part B, very comprehensive. It means ki think about it na, like suppose in test number 3 we have 7 topics, and in 7 topics I have to frame 29 questions. 29 questions हुए because 2 questions of 10 marks each, 5 questions उसके होंगे, 10 questions हो गए, and then out of that 6 questions we have to frame 3 questions from for each of the questions, right. So it means subpart. So it means कि we have to total frame 28 questions. Now in 7 topic 28 question is very difficult to frame, I must tell you. In 7 topic 28 question frame करने होंगे ना as examiner. Think about it. Question number 1 and question number 5 के 5 questions हो गए, and then 2, 3, 4, 9 question, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 questions. 3 part होते हैं, तो total कितने हो गए? 18 plus 10, 18 questions, 28 questions. Now this 28 question, it is very difficult to frame in the 7 topic. Okay, so it means that I am giving you that how repetitive the question must be, and that is why you will see that lot of questions that have been asked in a particular topic will always be repeated. No need to innovate and do something new कि नहीं कुछ अलग पढ़ेगा, but नहीं पूछता तो why अलग पढ़ेंगे. Like for example, state recognition. What is the 2 questions they ask? The topic of state recognition, there is only 2 questions they ask. One, de facto, de jure, and the second is the theories of recognition. Right? So that is the only 2 questions that can be asked in that particular topic. Right? So it also makes for me difficult to actually frame more questions than 2 from that state recognition topic. Right? So the point I am trying to make that it is very easy. Right? It is very repetitive in that sense. Okay. Then we will have test number 5, which will consist entirely of the law of crime. Now remember, this time I am asking you BNS questions. Last year what I did, I asked you IPC, but I advise people to write BNS in bracket. This time I am doing just the opposite. I am advising you to write BNS and write IPC in bracket. Now there is a high degree of chance that they are again going to ask you IPC only. Sorry, seasonal cough ho gayi hai. Right, so there is a high degree of chance that they are going to ask you IPC only. Don't bother. Okay, even they ask you IPC, you write BNS, because BNS is basically the new law, right, that have replaced the entirety of the IPC. So what you do, you write BNS and in bracket you write IPC. Right, so that is the one thing that must do this time. Then we have topic number 6, which will be consisting entirely of taught, test number 6. Then we will have test number 7, which will consist entirely of the contract, right. So in contract, you must be knowing that there are certain smaller topics for which if you need help, you can simply ask me how to go about it, because those topics, there are certain subtopic that is important. Other than that, the entire topic is need not to be read. Like for example, negotiable instrument, maximum question they ask meaning of the word negotiable, or what do you mean by negotiable instrument, what are the essential of the negotiable instrument, and 138. Beyond that, they don't ask you the entirety of the negotiable instrument, right. So obviously need not to go through. Similarly, in the case of Sales of Goods Act, obviously the same situation occurs, right, whereby they don't ask you the entirety of the Sales of Goods Act, just 3-4 topics. So obviously we will have to take that in mind as well. Okay. Then comes the CLD part. Now the CLD again, I will be, each year I give you the notes, right, very popular notes. But obviously this year I have just added 10-20% more, not 20%, even 10%, right, because I have just added new things that has happened. And I am telling you the new things that has happened is mostly in the case of the IPR and Arbitration Act. Okay, apart from that, older things still is valid. ये बात समझ में आ रही, right? So arbitration, they have come up with 3-4 very major judgment. Like for example, if you remember, in 2021 there was a judgment on with regard to the validation of the foreign arbitral award, and that was the question that was asked in 2022. So this time there is a judgment that has come with regard to validity of the stamped and unstamped agreement, okay, what it will have on the validity of the arbitration, right. So that is something which has happened new, right. So that part obviously, recently the Supreme Court talked about what is the power of the Supreme Court to modify arbitral award, right. Can Supreme Court modify arbitral award? However, the judgment came last week, so I don't think that is going to come in mains, but obviously if a question comes in the Arbitration Act, you can sort of mention it, right. So in CLD, the most of the notes have been changed in the case of the arbitration and IPR. Okay, so if you have previous notes, that is more than sufficient, right, but still obviously once the result comes, I will again give you a form to fill, whereby all the CLD notes I will be providing again. Okay, so not to worry about it. Okay, now these are the 8 sectional tests. Then I have given you 4 full length tests, right. I have given you 4 full length tests. It means for paper 1 we have test number 9 and 10, entirety of paper 1 we have test number 9 and 10, just like UPSC, right. Part A will be constitution, part B will be international law. Similarly in test number 11 also, 10 also, the part A will be constitution and part B will be international law. Similarly, I have given 2 full length tests, test number 11 and 12 of part B. Part A will consist of tort and crime, and part B will consist of the CLD and contract, right. Now that is where the people who has come to improve the rank, for them what I suggest, that you need not to go through the entirety of the paper again. Now if you have lowered, scored somewhere between 230 to 240, then obviously you need to attempt the entire paper. But if you have scored a decent mark, 255, 60s, right. So I think for you, just writing this full length paper would be more than sufficient. You need not to go through the entire exercise. Okay? Now for the people who are writing it for the first time, or if you have already given one entire test and you are writing before this mains, for you also I will ask you to take a judgment call, whether you need to give more time in your GS paper or in your law paper. So if you are fairly confident in law paper, writing this full length test also will be more than sufficient. Okay? So all 3 category of people understand. The first category, those who are writing this test, not giving mains, you write as it is, take instead of 1 week, 2 week time, right. Prepare comprehensively and try to finish the entire 12 test in almost 4 months. Okay. Those who are going to write mains for the first time, obviously you should also write the entirety of the test, and that test, all the 12 tests, and try to complete it by August mid, right. I think 18th, 19th se mains, right. When is the mains date? Yuvraj? I think it is from 19th or 18th. Acha 22. Okay. Right, so by 10th of the August the syllabus would be finished, right, your test. Now those who are coming for improvement of the rank, right, obviously a lot of people messaged me also. So in that case, remember, you should only go for these 4 tests. Now if you think that no, you have time and you can write it all, I mean it is good, but you can skip it, right, you can go for 4 tests. Like for example, you have seen this Aditya, right, Chitej also. Last year he wrote the entirety of the test, this year he wrote I think 2 or 3 tests, because the same thing I advised him also. Okay, so if you are fairly confident, what I will suggest that you go through the 4 tests. Now however, if you are trying to be too certain that a single digit rank chahiye, right, then obviously I will advise you to write the entirety of the test. Like last year the Kritika, right, she wrote the entire test, even though she was in Dainik Cadre, and I also advised her, see, your paper seems to be okay, you just write the 4 tests, that is sufficient, but still she said that no sir, I will write the entire test, and she wrote the entire test. Right, so it is actually totally up to you ki how better you are prepared in GS. So if you are better prepared in GS, then no problem, right, then you can come and write the entire test. But if you think that you need to give more time to GS also because it is not better prepared, then I will advise you to write the 4 tests. Now this is only for the people who are coming to improve ranks. ठीक है, तो आप judgment call लीजिए कि which part of the syllabus do you think you need to give more time, right? Like last time, yesterday I think someone called me that sir in ethics and GS, not GS, that essay paper, the boy has got less marks, right? So I advised her same thing कि you go for the ethics and thoughts को extra prepared कीजिए, and in the case of laws he got around 252. I said that it is okay, 10-20 mark improvement can be done even by that 4 test also. ठीक है, so that is one thing you keep into mind. Okay, now let us come to the, ये बात समझ में आएगी, structure of the test. Yes everyone, Divya, Yuvraj, everyone now, ठीक है, okay. Now let us come to the evaluation part, right? How evaluation will take place. Now see, in the case of evaluation, one thing which I have seen that works very miraculously, right, very nicely, is that when I check a test, obviously you know that I check it 1-to-1 basis. So what I will suggest you, this feedback have been given by this Aditya also, Chitej also, and also last year as well, but I did not pay much attention. But what they said that sir, while you speak while taking a test, what I used to do, that I used to have a copy, and in that copy I used to have sort of 5 pages. Page number 1, constitutional law, and whatever the feedback that you used to give with regard to constitutional law, I used to write it down, and I used to simply look at those feedbacks, because sometime after the copy is checked, you forget the feedback. Now that is something actually very important, because what happens, naturally for you also and for me also, that while suppose I am checking a copy on international law and in state recognition, or for that matter any other topic, suppose WTO topic, I said something to you, right? You wrote it down, okay, this is a new point. Now checking the same copy of WTO with regard to some other candidate, I can say something else, because obviously I have also not sort of remembered what to say, right? So very spontaneously whatever comes to my mind, I will tell you. That is actually very helpful. Getting my point, right? So what I will suggest to you, when you get your copy evaluated, keep a page, right, and in that page write down the feedback that I am giving. Like for example, I told you this particular case could have been mentioned. Like in the case, Chitej in fact told me, sir, you told me with regard to tribunal, there was a recent judgment of the Madras High Court whereby they said that okay, certain portion of the Tribunals Act is actually unconstitutional. So I went home and found those judgment and mentioned that in my actual test, actual exam. So it means sometime while checking the copy, I also obviously keeps reading, you also keeps reading. So I will come up with something new, right? That something new I might not tell the other candidate. Getting my point? ये बात समझ में आ रही है? Are you able to connect with me on this line? Yes. So what I will suggest you, you take a copy, and whatever I keep telling you, simply make a note of it. Okay? And that you try to implement. That is something actually very, very useful to you. Okay, so keep that in mind while checking the copy. This is something that you should do. Now evaluation, obviously my plans are, you can have it that itself. From 10 to 12 I will do the evaluation, right? So half hour, 10, 10:30, 11, 11:30, 12. Then in the evening I will do evaluation from 6 to 8, right? So after the class ends, the foundation class, 6, 6:30, 7:30, 8, and then in the night time I also do evaluation from 10 to 12. Take a 10, 10:30, 11, right? So it means ki all together I will be checking around 9 copy in a day, right? So in a week around 100 copies, right? So mostly 120, 150 students, 15 students actually take admission, right? So accordingly, my plan is that the copies should be checked within a week. Okay, within a week the copies should be to write means this year. One thing I will say that your copy checking might be little delayed. Okay, so don't complain. This delay is only for with regard to June, July. Beyond that, there will be no delay. Why? Obviously, some extra preference has to be given to the people who are going to write mains. Okay, so that one thing you keep in mind. Okay, so obviously the result is not out, so it is just a guesswork that who will get the opportunity to write mains and who will not get the opportunity to write mains. But whatever the cause, keep that in mind that people who will qualify will get little bit more preference. Okay, ये part clear है, copy checking part. Yes, तो अपना time भी आप इस हिसाब से think, right, कि the copy checking will occur only in this time frame itself, right? तो मतलब ये हुआ कि 12 से 6 के बीच में कोई copy checking नहीं होगी mostly, right? तो you can also schedule your time ना कि अगर आप कहीं और भी test लिख रहे हैं with regard to GS, तो you can schedule your time accordingly. Okay, so that is something I wanted to say. Now let us come to the most important part, that is your writing answers. Now remember this year I have seen people who have gotten good marks. The only difference that they had is with regard to two things. The first difference that they had is with regard to inclusion of current affair. And the second difference that they had is with regard to quotations, good lines from different topics, jurist, author, judgments. Now, what I will suggest to you, obviously in your model answer that will be there, but still what I will suggest to you, that you also start collecting or sort of any good thing that you must have studied in college, or any good author or any judgment that you are reading recently, or any live law reporting that you are reading recently. If you find certain good lines, suppose on theft, the Supreme Court said something in a particular, so Justice so and so said in this about theft, so that becomes a very, very good introduction. So it means you will have to make your answer little bit more unique, not very generic, right? So how that uniqueness will come into picture, that is something that is determined by these two aspects, that is your current affair, and current affair we will talk about, and this good lines, or you can say some quotation from the jurist. Now what I am doing this year is that I am also trying to come up with good lines, and I will give you a list of topic and some good lines which can be attached with those list of topics that I am giving you this year. But again, I will be just giving 2-3 good lines for each topic. So if you think that something more could be added, you will have to add it by yourself. That will make your answer very unique. ये बात समझ में आ रही है, right? Because what I have observed that answers more or less is similar of all the candidates, but the people who are scoring more, their answer is little bit more unique. If you go through the copies, you will find that answers are more or less same, but there are hardly 10% of the answer which is new, which no one has written. Just the 10%. And that 10% difference actually gives you the 10% difference in marks also. So that is the journey from 260 to 280 to 90. So what you have to do, that you have to have this differentiated approach. That differentiated approach is very, very important. Right? And there is only two things that can make your answer very differentiated. So that is the two things that makes your answer very, very differentiated. Yes, Yuvraj, I remember. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, second thing, that is with regard to your current affair, what I have done, that I have prepared a current affair topic wise compilation of all the previous weekly current affair that I gave. Now remember, the role of the current affair is not to substitute the traditional questions, traditional case laws. Like for example, if you are writing a tort questions on vicarious liability, you cannot skip MC Mehta. Okay? Or you are writing absolute liability, sorry, you cannot skip MC Mehta. Even though in certain new cases the court have reiterated the same thing, but the MC Mehta actually laid the foundation with regard to the absolute liability principle. So it means that the current affair cases will never and never substitute the traditional one or the most important one. What then current affair comes into picture? How to write it? So it will be used either in the introduction part or in the conclusion part. Ki recently quote in so and so said has something like that. Okay, so it means ki the current affair that I am also giving you, you will see that there is a case and just 2 to 3 lines with regard to that case. Not going into detail ki kya tha, doesn't matter. Just 2 to 3 lines are hardly 4 lines, not more than that. So remember, you need not to go and read current affair, no, that is not required. What you have to do, that in each topic you should have 1 or maximum 2 case law which is recent in nature. Like for example, this same absolute liability principle, you could have mentioned ki recently in Upar gas tragedy case the court said so and so. Ki absolute liability principle is a very good innovation, judicial innovation, and it helps the victim of a tragedy. So it means even though the absolute liability principle was found in some landmark judgment, but still some recent cases could be mentioned. So that could be only mentioned in the last, that is your conclusion part, not in the into this body part. The body part still would be only consisting of the landmark cases. ये बात समझ में आ रही है? So that document that I will pass you will be around 20-30 pages long, not more than that. Okay, 20 to 30 page long, not more than that. So beyond it, you need not to go through. Now again, if there is some judgment, like last year I remember one of the student, I think, no, not last year, last year, one of the student actually gave me a list of his own compilation. He said these are, now in that 2-3 judgment I missed, but he gave me and I ultimately included that in the list, right? So same thing can occur this time also, right? I will give you the judgment, and that judgment I will give you once the result comes. I think after first test I will give the judgment. That current affair compilation, right? So it means once that is there, what you can do, that if you think that there is something else which I have forgot to include, I could not take that into account, you please provide me and I will simply write that out in that particular current affair. Okay, so more than that, aisa nahi ki you go and start writing compendium, etc., not required for that. Ye baat samajh mein aa rahi hai everyone? Yes, are you guys getting this point? Okay, chill. Now let us come to the last part of the lecture, that is with regard to writing answers. Now with regard to writing answers, what I will tell you, first thing is that time. I have often seen people struggle with the time, meaning either they skip one question or they write in 4 hours. See, those who have already appeared mains won't be having this problem, but those who are appeared for the first time, they will have this problem, that in initial test you don't have much writing practice. What you will realize, that the question or the time that you are taking to write test is almost 4.5, sometimes even 5 hours. But what I will suggest, that you write that in one sitting. Make a situational structure like an exam. See, the exam actually I am giving it. And suppose out of 19 questions you wrote only 12 questions in 3 hours. You make a point, okay, only 12 questions I wrote in 3 hours and rest 7 questions I took additional 1 hour. So having that time limit gives you a sort of an understanding that how fast you need to write. And one thing, especially those who are writing for the first time, don't worry if for the first, second test you are taking 4 hours. And I have seen people, sir, test hi nahi khatam ho raha, how will I do in mains? Doesn't matter, because first 1-2 test anyway you are going to take more time. It is only with the writing practice the time limit decreases. Same question, think about it. Same question, if you writing it in 10 minutes, if I ask you to immediately write the same question, you will reduce it to 6 minutes, 7 minutes. So automatically once you rewrite a particular question, the time reduces. So you need not to worry about the time factor in first 2 to 3 tests. Just write how much you can write in 3 hours and then make a pointer, and after that you complete the test. ऐसा नहीं कि 3 घंटे होगा तो छोड़ो आप नहीं लिखेंगे. No, you will have to write the entire test. The only thing that you have to take into account, that you make a sort of a judgment that how much time you are taking with regard to that extra completion, okay, so that you can reduce it. Like I have seen people coming to me very disheartened कि सर हो ही नहीं रहा है, 4 hours हो रहा है, 5 घंटे लग रहा है, right? So that is something that you will have to understand, that until and unless you write something again and again, time limit is not going to get reduced. So the time limit only comes into the picture if what you do, that you write the same test again and again. Now the questions are repetitive. So suppose you are writing a question of international law, international law is weak law. First time you might take 10 minutes to write it down. But the second time you would exactly know what to write. So the aim should be in actual mains paper you should not have any questions that you have not written. In actual mains paper you should not have any question that you have not written. Okay, so that is something you must keep into. Now Priyanka is asking, receiving notes. No, notes won't be giving test series, notes is not a part of it, but obviously you will be getting this model answer that is almost as good as notes. Okay Priyanka, you will be getting the model answers, and model answers should be as good as notes, right? So you need not to worry about it. Okay, now in the last time what I will suggest you not to go and start reading from book itself, right? It is advisable that you read from the notes that you have made, right? That is, I think, a very good approach. And if you are someone who have qualified prelims and have not prepared, tab to yaar books to padhni padegi, right? In that obviously you can refer to the standard books or Dukkis also. Now with regard to Dukkis, one thing I wanted to say, previously obviously I am from DU, as you all know, the Dukki used to be quite thin at that time, right? अब मैंने देखा recently, I think एक हफ्ता पहले someone came up with a Dukki कि सर ये ठीक है, मैंने देखा कि ना Dukkis are as thick as the book itself. Have you observed it? कि Dukki almost book के बराबर पड़ा. Have you seen that? This observation is true or not true? कि Dukkis भी almost उतना ही बड़ा जितने बड़ा book, right? So it is as good as book actually. ठीक है? So this concept of having Dukkis very thick and very thin, and you can cover it in a very few time, right? I mean few hours is now no longer valid. ठीक है? So that is something and I told you with regard to current affair compilation, maximum by 8th or 9th. I am waiting for the result to come out actually. Okay, once the result comes up, I have almost prepared. Crime के कुछ certain I'm still adding it. अभी मैं बैठ के वही add कर रहा था. In fact, international law में there is one thing which I am very sure this year question will come. कि India have actually ICJ is doing a proceeding with regard to the climate change. कि what is the state responsibility with regard to climate change? And India had made a submission last year. This is what we have to say with regard to our responsibility vis-a-vis climate change. That is around 30-40 page long document, right? So I am very sure that this year there might be a question on international on that, right? So obviously I will be in your this test series also will be giving that question, right? So I am still compiling, right? So 90% to compile kar liya, some of them is left which I will be obviously giving you. Okay, so not to worry about. Atindra, I have told you with regard to CLD, if you are not from the beginning, that CLD, almost all of the CLD is same, only the arbitration part and the part with regard to IPR, some certain new development has taken place, right? So both of them I will revise, and CLD I will again give you in the coming weeks. Maximum by 15th of June I will give you all the CLDs. Okay, maximum by the 15th of the June I will be giving you all the CLDs. Okay, so that is I will. Soham, which book is best for constitutional law? Are you writing mains this year, Soham? No or yes? I mean probably. Okay. तो constitutional MP जन मत उठाइएगा, ठीक है? अगर MP जन उठा के पढ़ने लगे तो हाँ पता चलेगा 6 महीने बीत गए, MP जन का भी फंडामेंटलिटी कवर नहीं हो पा रहा. Okay, so right, so don't do that. Don't do that. Okay. Now let us come to the second thing that I wanted to say with regard to writing answers is your structure and presentation part. Now content part obviously I will discuss when I will check your copies, because these are the things that you could have read. Structure and presentation. Now remember the three things that is important for writing any answer, that is your structure, presentation and content. Now content is something obviously that you will have to improve by reading more, but with regard to structure and presentation, one thing I want to tell you is that 50% of your marks depend upon structure and presentation. 50% of your marks. Now this I have said it multiple times, it doesn't matter how expert you are in a particular subject, if you are not able to present it effectively in a more readable format to the examiner, doesn't matter how much you know. Right? Like for example, I will give you two batchmates. One was Animesh and that 31 rank Avinash. Both of them brilliant, almost equivalent in terms of knowledge. But still Animesh got less mark, and that happened just because of his handwriting. He used to write very abstract handwriting, I used to tell them, sir, sometime even checking copy, I used to say, okay, what is this word? So if I am unable to read and he himself sometime has to see the previous words to decipher what is the next word, then how can you expect an examiner to give you good marks? So it means, if your handwriting is bad, I will suggest you to improve upon it. Right? So it means when you are talking about the word presentation, so presentation basically there are only three things in the presentation. Keep that in mind. First is the handwriting, obviously. As I often say, have you seen any topper, leave law, any topper of any subject with any optional who have a bad handwriting? Like this year, that topper, that rank 1, see your copy, how very beautifully written handwriting. Right? So handwriting actually is very, very important. Keep that in mind. So if you are someone who have ignored handwriting and think that okay, without having a good handwriting you can literally pass, have a good mark, that is simply not possible. Not possible at all. Right? So what I will suggest you, that if you are bad at handwriting, try to improve it. Obviously I know what you have been doing for last 20 years cannot be improved in 2 months, obviously. It is simply impossible, but at least make it much more readable. Right? Make it much more readable. Second thing with regard to presentation comes is writing small paras. No one reads half page para without any gapping. No one reads it. कोई नहीं पढ़ता है, आपको खुद नहीं पढ़ने मन लगेगा. So gone are the days जहाँ पे आप एक पेज entire पैरा लिख रहे हैं, कोई बीच में आप you are not giving any kind of spacing etc. Doesn't work. So even though if you have to write 5 para, what you do, that you break it into 3 smaller paras. ठीक है, तो अगर आपको एक पैरा लिखना है तो make it into 3 smaller paras. बस you have to just change the line, that's it. Okay, that makes it much more readable. Keep that in mind. And the last is using pointers instead of case law heading. Case law को heading कभी मत बनाइए. Not make the case law heading. Make the crux of that particular case the heading. Like for an example, a question that is often asked, discuss the evolving and changing dimension of the word state under Article 12. Often asked, very repeated question. Now in that, if you write Santabai case as a heading, that is not a good idea. What should be the heading? The heading should be Ejusdem generis principle. Then you write 1-2 line with regard to it, and then in bracket you write Santabai. So it means that now there both thing is clear. The gist of that particular case as a heading as well as the case itself. Do not make the case itself the heading. ये बात समझ में आ रही है? Are you getting this particular point, right? So it means कि as far as possible do not make case as a heading. Always make the main point of that particular case as a heading. Do not make case as a heading. Now this is something you will have to improve upon. Jैसे whenever I will check copy, there also I will tell you कि यहाँ पे you write this heading. ठीक है? That heading would have been better, right? And often the questions are repeated. So if you sit with a page, then obviously this thing, if you will write okay, in this heading could be written, so that obviously you can write in the next exam, and often the questions are repeated. जैसे मान लीजिए मैंने ये Article 12 वाला ही, I have given you the feedback in test number 1. When you write a full length test, there is a very high probability that this question again I will ask, right? So there you keep that in mind कि नहीं इसमें यहाँ पे ये heading होनी चाहिए. ठीक है? That small improvement actually works miracles. ये बात समझ में आ रही है? Are you getting my point or not? Yes, everyone. Only Maitri and saying, and everyone else is not responding much. Are you getting my point, Priyanka? Priyanka, are you the same Priyanka? Priyanka Priyadarshini or someone else? Aditya? Okay. Chali. Good. Now, let us come to the last point, that is structure part. See, a structure part is something which I keep on repeating. Structure answer. Now what do you mean by actually structure? simply break it down, understand it very nicely. Suppose there is a question, now the same question, suppose that discuss the evolving dimension of article 12. Now this question, don't expect the examiner to read just because their job is to read and check the copy. You will have to make him or her read. You will have to make it so readable that the examiner wants to read it. Now suppose the examiner don't have much time and UPSC is so opaque with regard to copy checking that they don't even give you the exact copy. However, there is a High Court judgment whereby the Supreme Court, UPSC have replied that how they check the copy, right? And if you read the judgment, you will laugh. Kya yaar, aisa to matlab it is simply impossible. It is simply impossible, right? Because what they have said, we check the copy and then the average mark of 20 people taken from one examiner, and if it is above the average marks of the other examiner, then the 10% of the sample is rechecked, and if the there is a variation between that sample and by the other faculty, and when there is a variation of more than 5%, then the entire copy is rechecked, right? So the procedure that they have given affidavit is so complex that I don't think that would have been adopted there, but still they have said so, so we have to believe that that must have been adopted. Now having said that, can you expect an examiner to read each and every answer in very detailed line? The answer is no. So it means you will have to sort of snatch marks from him or her. Now how to do that? That is where the structure comes into the picture. By looking at glance at it, the examiner should know that what is required in the answer is present in the answer. Now which part of the answer do you think examiner at a first glance have much more sort of observant? Ki haan bhai ye likha hua hai. That is only headings and subheadings. So the headings and subheadings should be in a manner whereby you are not only giving headings and subheadings but also answering the questions. Like for example, this question of article 12, what you can do that first talk about okay, so and so provided in article 12 meaning of the word state. Then what you do, that the heading should be, if I have to write the question, what I will do, that I will give it with 3 headings. First heading I will give it the adjudicatory generis principle. Then the second heading I will be giving it the instrumentality test, RDCT and other cases. And then I will be giving public function test. 3 heading I will be giving. That BCCI and other cases. So it means what I am doing here, even though the examiner is not reading the entirety of the answer, he will understand that I am talking about the changing dimensions. I am talking about the evolving dimensions of article 12, meaning of the word state. So it means your heading and subheading should be actually answering questions also. So that at one glance a person can understand that okay, you have answered what is required in that particular question. This point is clear, everyone? Yes or no? Very important point. The answer should be made in such a manner, the headings and subheadings should be in such a manner that the examiner simply at a glance should understand that yes, the student or the candidate know what are the changing dimensions of article 12 or how article 12 has actually evolved. So instead of making the case heading, what you have to do, you have to make the main point of that answer the heading itself. In fact, I often tell you have to actually write a beautiful, Hindu article. If you look at the Hindu or for that matter Indian Express article also, what they do, after each 1 or 2 paragraph they give a very apt heading. Very apt heading. And that heading is in such a flow, even if you don't read the entirety of the article or the editorial, you simply read the heading, you will understand what are the dimensions that have been covered in that particular article. Right? Okay? So remember, 2 things, that is your structure and presentation. And the third thing is content part. Now content part I am not going into detail because that is something that is for the foundation batch, where I will help you with the content. But here the assumption is that the content is already ready. Right? The content is already ready. That is the assumption at least, right? And I believe most of you who are sort of in that arena, you will get into writing mains. Obviously, this problem will be not an issue. Okay, right? So that was all about this test that I wanted to say. Right now, let me take certain questions that you might have. So please, one by one, go ahead and ask me any question if you have any. Please go ahead. Someone is saying कि copy do not have much comment, right? That is I told you ना कि when I check copy one-to-one basis, I speak more कि भाई यहाँ पे ये हो सकता था, ये हो सकता था, instead of writing on the copy itself. That is why toppers copy में आप comment नहीं देखेंगे, कम comment होता है, ठीक है? Because I speak more. वो थोड़ा मेरे लिए convenient होता है, right? That I speak more. Okay? युवराज 3 राउंड तो रिवीजन कम से कम चाहिए, right? At least 3 round. Time devoted per question. Now that is a very question which actually depends, right? Because if you divide it, so all together you have to write around 19 question and you have around 3 hours, right? 360 minutes, sorry, 180 minutes. So ideally speaking, you cannot give more than 7 to 8 minutes per question, right? But again, the 10 marker question could be written in 3 to 4 minutes, and obviously the 20 marker can be given 8 to 10 minutes, right? So that is the generic. Again, it depends. Like for example, there is a 20 marker question, but you know everything about that marker question. Like secularism. Suppose there is a question on 20 marker question on secularism. Now you know, okay, these are the headings that is used: Supreme Court opinion, jurist opinion, Constitutional Assembly debates, recent cases. These are the 5 things you have to write in the secularism question. Now you already know. So even though it will, it will take your, it is a 20 marker time, it will take hardly 4-5 minutes of it. Okay, so that actually depends how much you know about the question. Okay, Atindra? So the content is not yet ready, 100%. Syllabus is 60, but most probably I will be writing. Oh, that is a very divya, very divya sikhar. That is a very. होता है. This happens every year. So what you can do, suppose आपने वही मैंने कहा कि आपकी पढ़ाई नहीं हुई है, तो what I do in that case, I will suggest you to actually buy the case. ठीक है, जो पोर्शन कवर नहीं हुआ, राइट? और कुछ टॉपिक मुझे भी आप भेज सकते हैं, तो I will send you some PDF or something to read. हाँ, होता है हर एक साल कुछ टॉपिक अगर नहीं हुआ तो that I will help you. Okay, दिव्य? Modus operandi for paper checking. Yes, it will be through a Zoom call. मैं ग्रुप में भेज भी दूंगा, नहीं तो मैंने आदित्य की कॉपी में भेज दूंगा मैंने कैसे चेक किए थे. थोड़ा सिंपल है, मैं एक पहली सेशन रिकॉर्ड करके आपको भेज देता हूँ ताकि इफ यू वांट टू रिवाइज इट, इट इज नॉट पब्लिक ऑन यूट्यूब ऑब्वियसली, दैट इज अ रॉन्ग थिंग टू से. तो व्हाट आई विल डू, what I do that on Zoom, I project the iPad to the Zoom और आप उसको स्क्रीन को देखते हैं, I will also give you the feedback according. ठीक है, तो that is how the copy is checked. Okay, Posham is asking how many case law. That actually depends. This case law part बहुत बच्चों को confusion होता है. See, how much case laws to be written depends upon the question. Now there is a question which is philosophical in nature. It is a 20 marker, 4-5 काफी है. But if they ask you to ask the evolution, like ये article 12 बता, तो इसमें 6-7 case law चाहिए. Even though it is asked in 15 marker at least, then also you will read at least 6-7 case law because you have to discuss the evolution. ठीक है, so that actually depends upon. ये मैं बोलूँगा भी, right? When you write a question ना, तो मैं कहूँगा different type of question में, किसमें और भी case चाहिए. कुछ question होगा no case is required, कि discuss the working of the पंचायती राज institution. GS type question है यार, इसमें कोई case नहीं चाहिए. ठीक है, इसमें अगर आप recently if you find some case कि Supreme Court has committed so and so, तो एक case भी चलेगा वहाँ पे. ठीक है, so actually depends upon what kind of question we are talking about. Okay, now question. Okay. नहीं, you need to just refer to the notes that I have dictated. Okay, Yuvraj? Not more than that. Don't worry. Don't worry. Buy your notes. No, I don't think they sell. छोड़ो नहीं, क्यों notes के पीछे पड़े? मैंने बोला ना, वो जो model answer मिलेगा, that is the note itself. सोचिए आप, कुल मिला के 12 टॉपिक है, मतलब 12 टेस्ट है. 12 टेस्ट में अगर आप 30 भी मान लो, 360 क्वेश्चंस है, उसके आपको डिटेल मॉडल आंसर मिलेंगे. That is as good as notes. Okay, so don't worry, that is as good as notes. ठीक है, so don't worry about it. ठीक है युवराज, that is okay. और अभी मैं टॉप अप करूँगा, not to worry युवराज, don't worry. Okay, Ira is asking कि sir, we must go for paper 1 to paper 2 or we must attempt paper 2 test first. मैं तो कहूँगा कि सीरियल में स्टार्ट कीजिए, go for paper 1, क्योंकि paper 1 थोड़ा easy है, तो gives you more confidence. ठीक है, I think you should go for paper 1 first. Okay, Ira? Physically, obviously, those who will call offline, the copy will be checked physically. यही तो होता है ना. जैसे मान लो कि आपने देखा भी होगा कि ऑनलाइन बहुत बच्चों की कॉपी सारी नहीं होती है. The reason is that itself, like this Anmol only 3 copy or 2 copies there, because rest of the copies came physically for offline. तो फिजिकली में तो कॉपी होती नहीं ना, सिंपली स्टूडेंट कम, आई चेक एंड गिव इट बैक टू देम, राइट, तो लेके चले जाते हैं, राइट, तो दैट इज हाउ इट वर्क्स, ओके, डोंट वरी। लाइक हाँ, एक और लड़का साहिल ने भी इस पर फिर से क्वालिफाई किया, आई हैव सीन, साहिल हैज आल्सो क्वालिफाइड दिस, साहिल दिसवाल, 200 समथिंग रैंक इज देयर, राइट, सो yesterday I came to know that he also qualified. On which day copies? Every day, युवराज, every day. वो तो अंजलि will plan, अंजलि will plan. किसी डे अगर मैं नहीं हूँ तो हालांकि I also you know make sure कि जून जुलाई में बिल्कुल अवेलेबल रहूँ, ठीक है, छुट्टी ना लो, ठीक है, तो डोंट वरी, कॉपीज मैं बड़े टाइम पर चेक करता हूँ, एक वीक हार्डली होगा, बहुत ही रेयर केस में इट विल गो बियॉन्ड अ वीक, एक वीक में कॉपी चेक करूँगा तो मैं करूँगा, ठीक है। चलिए, I have told you for CLD, so only in the arbitration and IPR some new developments are there. Rest everyone hardly 1-2 new cases are there. So obviously add and I will send it. ठीक है, अभी रिजल्ट आने दीजिए, I will send it. Not to worry. अभी आपको उसमें बहुत दिमाग लगाने की जरूरत है। चलिए, तो वाइंड अप करें फिर आज के लिए everyone. Okay? मिलते हैं फिर. Let us meet. कॉपी लिखिए and obviously if you have any query you must be having my number. Contact me. Okay? नहीं तो बेस्ट तो मुझे ईमेल कर लीजिए आप, ठीक है, ईमेल aditya9@gmail पे, ठीक है, ईमेल मी एंड आई रिस्पॉन्ड बेटर टू द क्वेरीज, ठीक है, दैट इज व्हाट। चलिए, थैंक यू एवरीवन।